Hey friends, what's up? And welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Zayin, Daf 7 of Masechta Megilla. Friends, before we jump in, just a few words. I just got back from the funeral, from the Levaya of a good Chaver, Reb Nachman Futterman. Nachman, of course, was a member of a WhatsApp group. He loved Babylon Talmud very much. He was a great Gewaldige Chaver, an Emerson Yid, a real Yoreh Shamayim. I taka one time on Purim, I made a siyum on Masechta Megillah at his house. Every Purim I would go to Nachman Futterman's house and I would read the Megillah. It was always very fun. Every Purim I would read the Megillah for Nachman Futterman at night, during the day, with his family. It was Gewaldig. There would be a Suda over there. And then one year I made a siyum on Masechta Megillah at Nachman Futterman's house. Friends, we said yesterday about Reb Zera when he passed away, right? We said that when Reb Zera passed away, they said Eretz Shiner Hara V'Yalada, that Reb Zera was born in Bavel, Eretz Tzvi Gidla Shashuel, but he grew up in Eretz Yisrael. Oyin Allah Omer Rakas Ki Avda Klechem Dasa. That we have lost really somebody very, very special. And Nachman Futterman, I believe he was from Brooklyn. He lived in Monsey also, Manhattan. He's the first president of the Carlebach Shul, if I'm not mistaken. And he moved to Eretz Yisrael probably about 15 years ago. He was a neighbor of mine for about 8 years, more, maybe 10 years. And Rav Nachman was a real special Yid. He was one of the first to go to Uman. He was going to the Uman since the 90s. He says, he described that you would get off the plane at a Russian Air Force military Air Force thing, and there would be MiG jets on the runway. He was going to Uman before everybody else was going. Anyways, this is Reb Nachman Futterman, a real gadol, real Emerson Yid, and one of our friends over here at Babylon Talmud. So may his soul have a very easy transition. Anyways, okay, so we're getting started over here on Daf Zayin of Masechta Megillah. Talk about a whole bunch of interesting things. Part of which we talk about is Mishlach Manos Matanos Levyonim, as well as Sudas Purim, some very, very interesting and famous incidents and things that happened. So friends, let us jump in. We are beginning about 7, 8, 9 lines into the page. The Maaseh Omer Shmuel Bar Yehuda Hua. So it says of Shmuel Bar Yehuda, Shochalom Esther Lachachamim, that Esther sent to the sages, Kivauni Lidoris, set me up, establish me for all generations, make me a thing, right? Commemorate me every year. Shalchula Kinoata Meoreris Aleinu Levina Umis. If we make a big deal out of it, well then the nations are going to get jealous of us because we're celebrating their downfall. So Shalchalaim, she sent to the sages, Kvar Ksuva Anya Yom Malchi Moda Yufaris. Right? I believe that's the last pasuk in all of Megillah, of the book of Megillah, is that all of these events are recorded on the recordings of things for the kings of Media and Persia. So basically, Esther says, "What are you worried about? I mean, this is public knowledge about what happened in the Purim story," and she says, "You don't have to worry about people getting jealous." Says the Gemara, Rav Chanina, Rav Yochanan, Rav Chaviva. So Rav and Rav Chanina, Rav Yochanan, and Rav Chaviva Masnu, they taught Bechulei Seder Moed. Now, parenthetically, everywhere in the book of Moed, called Ki Zuga, whenever you have this this group of people, Rav Chanina, Rav Yochanan, Rav Chaviva, and Rav. So Chalufe Reb Yochanan, so swap out Reb Yochanan and Reb Yonasan and swap Rabbi Yochanan for Rabbi Yonasan. Friends, let's move on. So Esther sent to the sages, Kisfuni Ladoris, write me down for all generations, for posterity? Oh gosh, I'm like making up words over here. Shalchula, they sent to her, Halo kasavti lecha. So it's a pasuk in Mishlei. It says, I wrote to you, Lemaise, Shalishim, thirds. Shalishim v'lo revayim, 3, not 4. Meaning, Amalek, right? Because Haman, of course, was from the nation of Amalek, and the pasuk says in Mishlei 3, not 4. Meaning, in this context, we mention Amalek 3 times, not 4 times. Those 3 times being in Sefer Shmos, in Sefer Devarim, as well as in Sefer Shmuel when it talks about Amalek Oichit. So the pasuk says that we mention Amalek 3 times, not 4 times, and therefore Esther suggested to the sages that they write down the book of Esther, and they said, well, we can only record Amalek 3 times, and we've already recorded them 3 times. Until they found a different pasuk, a different verse in the Torah, Ksov Zos Zikaron Basefer, that the pasuk says at the end of Parshas Beshalach, that write this down as a remembrance in the book. So Ksov Zos, when it says write this down, Masha Kosov Kana means what's written here in Sefer Shmos, with Mishnah Torah, as well as in Mishnah Torah, i.e. the recordings of Amalek in the Torah. So that includes both the recording in Sefer Shmos as well as the recording in Sefer Devarim, in Kiseitze. Zikaron Mashakasu B'Nevim, as remembrance that which is written in the prophets, Basefer Mashakasu B'Megilla. When it says Basefer, that's a reference to the Megillah. So therefore we were able to find a verse that implies that you can write down Megillas Esther as a recording of what Amalek tried to do to us. Kitanoi, as we talk learn in a brisa, Ksov Zos, write this, Mashakasuv Kan, that which is written in Sefer Shmos. Zikaron Mashakasuv Mishnah Torah. When it says Zikaron, that's a reference to that which is written in Sefer Devarim. Basefer, in the book, Mashakasuv B'Nevim, is a reference to that which is written in the prophets, i.e., there's no room for another recording. There's no room for the Megillah. Div Rabbi Yeshua, that's the opinion of Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Elazar Amodoi Omer, says Rabbi Elazar Amodoi, Ksov Zos, write this, Mashakasuv Kan Uv Mishnah Torah, that which is written here, as well as that which is written in Sefer Devarim. Zikaron, as a remembrance, Mashakasuv B'Nevim, that which is written in the prophets, Basefer Mashakasuv B'Megillah, that which is written in the Megillah. So, basically, according to Rabbi Yeshua, there is no room for Esther, because we've already recorded in Shmos, in Devarim, and in the Navi, in Shmuel. But according to Rabbi Elazar Hamudai, basically all of the mentions in the Torah go together, i.e. Shmos and Devarim go together, and then you have Sefer Shmuel, and then there's room for the Megillah as well. Amr Yehuda Shmuel says, if you read the name of Shmuel, Esther Eina Metame Isad Yodayim, that Megillas Esther doesn't make your hands tameh. Friends, does anybody remember what that is? That means that there was a sort of rule that was established that these holy books make your hands tameh. How come? Well, because what they would do is they used to keep truma together. You want to keep truma safe. So where's the best place to keep something safe? And pure and tahor? Well, just stash it in the same place where you stash your Sifrei Torah, where you have these holy books. So if they would put the truma together with these holy books, but then the mice would come to eat the truma and they would eat the holy books as well. So therefore he said, you know what? We're going to say that the holy books make your hands tameh, and if you make your hands tameh, then you're not going to want to keep your truma there, and then the mice aren't going to come and eat the holy books. So therefore, it says Rav Yehuda in the name of Shmuel that Esther Eina Metame Isad Yodayim, that the book of Esther does not make your hands tameh. L'meimra, to Sefer Shmuel, Esther la Baruch HaKodesh ne'emra. So is that to say that according to Shmuel, Esther was not said in with divine spirit, with ruach, divine providence? All right. Ve'amar Shmuel, right? Meaning, so Shmuel on the one hand is saying that Esther doesn't make your hands tummy, which means it sounds like it's nothing special. If it was special, it would make your hands tummy. So that sounds like Esther was not written with divine providence. Let's just assume that that's a word. Ve'amar Shmuel, but didn't Shmuel say Esther B'Ruach HaKodesh Ne'emra? But didn't Shmuel Taka say that Esther was written with divine providence? Friends, we're just going to assume that providence is the right word. So, but Shmuel says that Esther Taka was written with divine providence, and therefore it should be Metame Yor Yadayim. So why is Shmuel saying that it's not Metame Yor Yadayim? What do we do? Nemra likros v'lo nemra lichtov. So when we say that it was written with Ruach HaKodesh, that's to read it, but not necessarily to write it. Alright, what do you want me to tell you? So if you write it, it's not going to be Metame Yor Yadayim. Friends, let's move on. Meisvei, we have a kasha. Reb Meir Omer, Uwa, says Reb Meir. This is exciting. Koheles enu Metame Yisai Yadayim. Alright, well, Koheles will not make your hands tummy. Machlokas b'shir hashirim. It's taka kasha when it comes to shir hashirim. Does shir hashirim be Metame Yor Yadayim? Alright, these are very exciting machloksin. Rabbi Yossi Omer says, Rabbi Yossi, shir hashirim Metame Yisai Yadayim. Shir hashirim is Metame the Yadayim. Machlokas b'koheles is taka shaylef. Koheles is Metame Yisai Yadayim. Alright, this is great stuff. Reb Shimon Omer says, Reb Shimon, Koheles mikule be'sham and be'silo, that Koheles is of the leniencies of the house of Shammai and the stringencies of the house of Hillel, that I guess that Koheles would be Metame your hands according to Beis Hillel. Avol, friends, here we go. Rus, v'shir hashirim, v'Esther, Metame Minas hayodayim. But Rus, Shir Hashirim, and Esther are Metame Yor Yadayim. Boom. We have Reb Shimon ben Yochai saying that Esther is Metame your hands. How could Shmuel say that Esther is not Metame your hands? That's the kasha. Hudamar Rabbi Yoshua. So answer the Gemara that Shmuel just taka holds like Rabbi Yoshua. The Tanya, as we I'm sorry. So Huda Amar Rabbi Yoshua. So Shmuel taka holds like Rabbi Yoshua that what did Rabbi Yoshua say? Who could remind me? That Ksov Zos Mashakosov Kan Zikon Mashakosov Mishnah Torah B'Sefer Mashakosov B'Nevim to Rabbi Yoshua. That Rabbi Yoshua had said a few minutes ago that when it says Ksov Zos, that's a reference to Sefer Shmos. Zikaron, that's a reference to Sefer Dvarim. B'Sefer, that's a reference to Shmuel. There is no room for writing down Esther, and therefore Esther will not be Metame Yor Yadayim. That is so Shmuel holds like Rabbi Yoshua. Tanya, we learned about Reb Shimon ben Menashe. Omer says Reb Shimon ben Menashe, Koheles einu Metame Yisai Yadayim. That Koheles, the book of what's Koheles in English? I don't know. Koheles? I don't know. What's Koheles in English? I don't know. What do you want me to tell you? Ecclesiastes, right? Maybe. So says Reb Shimon ben Menashe, Koheles einu Metame Yisai Yadayim does not make your hands tummy. Because it's the wisdom of Shlomo. It's not, I mean, it's Gevaldik, but like, it's the wisdom of Shlomo. It's not B'Ruach HaKodesh or anything like that. So Amulo, they said to Reb Shimon ben Menashe, V'chi zo b'vad omer, v'alo kvar ne'emar, v'yidaber shloshes alaf mashal. But they respond to Reb Shimon ben Menashe, they say, Koheles isn't just any random wisdom of Shlomo. After all, Shlomo, he was responsible for 3,000 metaphors, I guess, mashals. Out of all 3,000, Koheles specifically was written down. V'omer, and also the pasuk says, Al tosef al dvar, don't add anything onto his words, implying that these are unique, these are special. These are, these are B'Ruach HaKodesh, they should be Metame Yisai Yadayim. So, why would Reb Shimon ben Menashe say that Koheles is not Metame Yisai Yadayim if it sounds like Koheles is unique, is special? So, how come we need a second pasuk of Al Tosef Al Dvar, don't add anything onto his words? V'chitema meimer tuva Omar, if you're going to say, well, Shlomo said a lot of things. Whatever he felt like writing down, he wrote down. Whatever he didn't feel like writing down, he didn't write down. So Tashma Al Tosef Al Dvar. No, it's not as simple as that. It's not just he wrote down whatever he felt like wrote down. It's not just that he wrote down whatever he felt like writing down. What he wrote down was unique. It was Al Tosef Al Dvar. Don't add anything to it because these things are special. So therefore, the argument would be that Koheles is unique, Koheles is special, and therefore it should be Mitami es hayodayim. Tanya, we talk a little in the Brisa. Rabbi Eliezer says, Taka Rabbi Eliezer, Esther Bracha Kodesh Nemra, that Esther was Taka written with divine providence. Shenemra, as the Apostle says, Vayomer Haman Belibo, that Haman said in his heart. Kilu, how did the writers of the Rashi says, it's Gevaldik. What does Rashi say? Mino Yodu Kosve Megilla, Shekach Omer Belibo, Eluacha Kodesh Nigla Aleim. How did the writers of the Megillah, right? Somebody had to write down the Megillah. So how did those people who were writing down the Megillah know what Haman was thinking? It must be that it was with divine providence, and the divine providence dictated that that's what Haman was thinking. Rabbi Akiva Omer, says Rabbi Akiva, Esther Bracha Kodesh Nemra, that Esther was written with divine providence. Shenemra, as the Apostle says, Vati Esther Nosei Schein Be'eni Korael, that Esther inspired favor in the eyes of all who saw her. How do they know that? It must be there was divine providence. Meir Omer says, Meir Esther Bracha Kodesh Nemra, that Esther was written with divine providence. Shenemra, as the Apostle says, Vayivada Adav L'Motche, that Motche found out about the scheming of Bigsan Viseresh. How did he find out? How did he just know? It must be that there was divine providence. Rabbi Yossi ben Damascus Omer says, Rabbi Yossi ben Damascus Omer Esther Bracha Kodesh Nemra, that Esther was written with divine providence. Shenemra, as the pasuk says, Uva Bizel O Sholchu Es Yodam, that none of the Yidden touched any of the spoils after all the revenge. So how does the writers of Megillah know that not even one nudnik took epis? So it must be divine providence. Amr Shmuel, says Shmuel, Yavoy awesome. If I was Takadar in Hava Amina Milsa, I would have said epis, Dadifa Mikulu, which would be better than all of those other proofs. Shenem, as the apostle says, Kimu v'kiblu, that the Yidden established and received, Kimu lemala, that they established above, Mashikiblu lamata, that which they accepted below. How did they know what was going on above? It must be that there was Ruach HaKodesh. Amirav says, Rav l'chulu islu pircha levar midishmuel. All of the other suggestions as to why Esther was written with divine providence, you can ask Kashas on those. But Shmuel's is the strongest of them all. Deleis le pircha, there's no Kashas you can ask. Rabbi Eliezer svaru. Right? Rabbi Eliezer says, what was Rabbi Eliezer's proof that Esther was written with divine providence? Because it says that Haman says in his heart. How did they know what he was saying in his heart? Well, it's obvious. There was nobody as fancy as he was in the palace. Right? He was the highest official. And when he was saying and piling on all of these great things that should happen, he was saying that assuming that they would go to him. It doesn't take a brain scientist to assume that Haman was just trying to get good stuff for himself. And Rabbi Akiva says that Esther was in Baruch HaKodesh because it says that Esther aroused favor in the eyes of all who saw her. How do they know that? Well, maybe Dilma Rabbalazar, maybe it's like Rabbalazar, that pasuk teaches that everybody who saw her, Pasha just assumed that she came from their nation. Not that she was like a Jewish girl, but that she was part of their nation. Alright. And that which Reb Meir says that how did Mordechai know about what Bigsan and Seresh were scheming? It must be that there was Ruach HaKodesh. So maybe it's like Reb Chia bar Abba. Tomer Bigsan v'Seresh Shnei Tarshim Hayu. Maybe it's like Reb Chia bar Abba who says that Bigsan and Seresh were two Tarshian people, and therefore they assumed that nobody else knew how to speak their language. But what they did not know is that Mordechai knew 70 languages, and therefore he was able to know what they were scheming and easily find out. To Rabbi Yossi ben Damascus, and that which Rabbi Yossi ben Damascus was Yodam, that nobody touched anything that they shouldn't have taken. How did they know? So Dama Pristike Shadur, or maybe they talk a sent notifications to Mordechai and Esther to say that nobody touched anything because they didn't want to, do the wrong thing after all that the king did for them at the time. So the Shmuel vade leis lepircha, but Shmuel's argument doesn't have any questions. It says kimu v'kibla Yehudim kimu lemala masha kiblu lemata. How does the Megillah know what was accepted above? It must be that there was divine providence. Amar Ravina says, Ravina hainu damar inche. This is what the people say. Tavachad pil palta chrifta. That one sharp hot pepper is better mimalitzane kari than a whole basket full of gourds. So I mean, you have all of these other opinions, but there's one opinion that sticks out. Kari Rav Yosef Amar says of Yosef Me'acha from here that these days of Purim will not be removed from the Yidden, i.e., how does the Megillah know that we will still to this day be celebrating Megillah? Must be that there is divine providence celebrating Purim. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak Amar says of Nachman bar Yitzchak Me'acha from here v'zichrum lo yosef mizarim, that its remembrance will not cease from their offspring. So again, how do they know what will be in the future? So it must be that there was divine providence. Okay, friends, now we get to some very important halachis of Purim. Umatonis levyonim. We had mentioned matonis levyonim, gifts to the poor in our Mishnah. Tani Rav Yosef taught umishloach manus ish l're'ehu, that when the pasuk says sending portions from one to another, shtei manus le'ish echad, that means you give two portions. Says Rashi, what does he say? Rashi says manus mine maidonim, delicious delicacies. So you should give two delicious delicacies to one fellow, that, and then you're yotze the mitzvah. Matanos levyonim, and gifts to the poor, shtei matanos l'shnei bnei adam, two gifts to two respective individuals, meaning one gift each, right? So you give, you give epis to Ruvain, the ani, and you give epis to Shimon the ani, and you are yotze that mitzvah. Rabbi Yehuda Nesiya, Shadurle l'Reb Oshaya, Givaldik. So Rabbi Yehuda Nesiya, the grandson of Rabbi Yehuda Anasi, he sent to Reb Oshaya Atma, a thigh, the igla tilsa, of a third calf. The third calf seems to always be the best one. Rashi says it's the third one born to its mother. Okay, but that's, I guess, the best calf. V'garbi de chamra, and I guess like a flask of wine. Okay, so Shalach Leis, Reb Oshaya responds he sends back to Rabbi Yehuda Nesiya, Kayamta banu Rabbeinu, you have been Mekayim with us, Mishlach Manos, Ish L'Re'ehu, sending the delicacies from one to the other. That Rabbi Yehuda Nesiya sent this meat and this wine, and that was his Mishlach Manos. Sounds very gevaldik. Rabba Shadale Lemari Bar Mar Biyad Abaye. Interesting. So Rabba sent to Mari Bar Mar in the hands of Abaye Milay Taska de Kashba, a sack full of dates. Sounds nice. Umilay Kasa Kimcho da Avshuna, and a cup full of roasted grain or something, flour. I don't know. Sounds delicious. Abai says to Rabba, Hashta Amar Mari is going to say, if a farmer were to become a king, what? Is he not going to take down the basket off of his head? Kilu. Abai was saying to Rabba, Abai grew up in Rabba's house. Abai says to Rabba, he says, Rabba, look, you're now the Rosh Hashiva. You're now the Rosh Hashiva in Pumbedisa. You should send something. Right? It's interesting that you're still sending a sack full of dates and some flour. Hadar Shadar Le Iu, and then Mari Bar Mar sent back to Rabba Mlotaska de Zengvila, a sack full of ginger. Umlo Kasa de Pilpata Aricha, and a cup full of long peppers. Abai says, Abai Ashta Amar. Now Rabba is going to say, Onashadri Le Chulia, I sent to him sweets. Ve'iu Shaduli Churfa, and he's sending to me spicy. Alright, what do you want me to tell you? Amar Abai, so says Abai, Kinafkim in Beimar, when I had left Rabba's house, to go to Mari Bar Mar. Have a savaina. I was already full. I'd eaten. I didn't think I was hungry at all. Kimatoi lost him when I got to Mari Bar Mar. So Krivuli, they brought out for me shisin sa'ed the shisin mine kedera, 60 plates full of 60 types of cooked dishes. Ve'achli be'u, and I ate shisin pluge 60 pieces, uvishula basraisa avukari le tzlikeder, and the final thing that they brought out was called pot roast. Uva'oy le meches tzoa abaso, and it was so gishmak that I wanted to eat the plate even. So Abai says, look, when he left Rabba's house, he thought he was full. He wasn't particularly hungry. When he got to Mari Bar Mar, there was such abundance of absolutely gishmak in Maidonim that he ate all of it. He even wanted to eat the plate. That's how delicious it was. Amar Abai says, Abai hanudam inche. This is what the people say. Kafin anya velo yada. A poor person could be hungry and not even know it. Inami, or else Rav cholev simo shchiach. There's always room for dessert. Abai bar Oven, Reb Chanina bar Oven, Mechafei Sudasayu la'adodei. Abai bar Oven and Reb Chanina bar Oven, they would switch off their Purim Sudas. Kilu, 1 year they would eat at Abai bar Oven's house. The next year they would eat at Reb Chanina bar Oven's house. They would switch off every year. That sounds very, very nice. Friends, this is possibly the most famous line in all of Masechta Megillah. Here we go. Oh my Rave, says Rave. Interesting, it's taka coming from Rave. Chayav inish livsume b'furaya. A fellow has an obligation to get fashnikid on Purim ad lo yada ben arahaman levarach motre, until he can no longer know the difference between cursed is Haman and blessed is Mordechai. A person has an obligation to get fashnikit. There's an obligation to get drunk so that he confuses Arer Haman and Baruch Mordechai. Rabba of Reb Zera, Abdu Sudas Purim Badi Adadi, famously, Rabba and Reb Zera, they made Sudas Purim together. Ivsum, and they got intoxicated. Kom Rabba Shochte le Reb Zera. Rabba slaughtered Reb Zera. The next day, Rabba prayed for Reb Zera and brought him back to life. Shana, next year, it sounds like Rabba says to Reb Zera, why don't you come over for Purim Suda? Reb Zera says, you can't just assume that a miracle is going to happen at every time. There was a big miracle last year, you killed me, you brought me back to life. I can't assume that that's going to happen again this year. Maybe we shouldn't do Purim Suda together. What a wild story. Rabba and Reb Zera, I mean, these aren't random characters. I mean, Rabba, the Sheshiva Pumpadisa, Reb Zera, right? Both Rabba and Reb Zera were students of Rav Yehuda. I mean, these are real big, heavyweights over here. Having Purim Suda together, Poshet Rabba, Kom Rabba Shochte le Reb Zera. What a story. Alright. Well, let's go weiter. Omer Rava says Rava, Sudas Purim sha'achlo balayla. If a fellow eats his Purim feast at night, lo yotzei dei chavos, it doesn't work. Kilu, Purim night, you can't have your Purim Suda. Purim Suda has to be on the afternoon of Purim. My time, how come? Yemei mishte v'simcha ksiv, because it says days of feasting and happiness, not nights. Ravashi ava Yosef coming to Kahana. Ravashi was sitting before Rav Kahana. Noga v'lo osur abonim. It was Purim. Ravashi was in the Beis Medrash with Rav Kahana. The day got late and the rabbis didn't come. Amrle, my time v'lo osur abonim. So Ravashi says to Rav Kahana, where is everybody? So Rav Kahana says, Dilma treated b'sudas Purim. Well, maybe they're busy with their Purim feast. Amrle, Ravashi says to Rav Kahana, Flave efshar lemechla ba'orta. Couldn't they have just eaten it the night before? Amrle, so Rav Kahana says, Lo shmile limar hada amar Rava. But Ravashi, didn't you hear that which Rava says? Sudas Purim shachla balayla lo yotzei dei chavasa. That if you eat Purim Suda at night, you don't fulfill your obligation. So of course they could not have had their Purim Suda the previous night. They have to have the Purim Suda during the day. And maybe they're busy with the Purim Suda, and that's why they haven't come to the Beis HaMedrash. Omarle, Omar Rava Achi. So Rav Ashi says to Rav Kahana, did Rava really say this? Amalein. So Rav Kahana says he certainly did. Tanamine arboin zimnin v'domile k'madamonach b'kisei. Rav Ashi then proceeded to learn this halacha from, that Purim Suda cannot be at night, from Rav Kahana 40 times until he had it in his pocket. Wow. Very, very interesting. Says the Mishnah in Ben Yom Tiv l'Shabbos l'Ochel Nefesh Bavad. The only difference between holidays and Sabbath is when it comes to food preparation. Of course, we know from Masechta Beya that on Yom Tiv you're allowed to prepare food, and you cannot. Right, you can cook on Yom Tiv. You cannot cook on Shabbos. Halinin Machshirei Ochel Nefesh. When it comes to Facebook Meta things that regarding food, Zev Zashavin, they are the same. Meaning, you can't make a knife to cut with on Yom Tiv. That you have to do before Yom Tiv. Right, before Yom Tiv, if you need to fix a knife to before Yom Tiv, you can't do it on Yom Tiv. And for that, both Shabbos and Yom Tiv are the same. So the cooking itself you could do on Yom Tiv, but any sort of Facebook Meta kind of things have to be done, right, both on Yom Tov and on Shabbos. You can't do them. Masisim Zol Rabbi Yehuda. Our Mishnah is not like Rabbi Yehuda the Tanya, as we talk learn in the Brisa. Ein ben Yom Tov l'Shabbos l'Ochel Nefesh Bavad. That the only difference between Yom Tov and Shabbos is cooking food, preparing food. Rabbi Yehuda Mata Af Machshiri Ochel Nefesh. Rabbi Yehuda says even the sort of Facebook Meta things around food preparation, such as if you have to make a knife or something like that, so then that is permitted. My time in the Tanakama, Hakam Tanakama says that only cooking is the only difference. On Mekra the pasuk says hu v'lo machshir. It right, meaning you, right, rak asher, right, or was it rak no, where is it? Only that which is able to be eaten can be done for you. So only like the actual food preparation and cooking, not its sort of Facebook Meta kind of aspects. Whereas Rabbi Yehuda says no, it says that it'll be for you. So the kol tzorkeichem, for all of your needs, even if it's like Facebook Meta-y kind of things, like, I don't know if I guess you have to prepare a knife, although we're going to see some interesting things in a second. What does the Tanakama do with the fact that it says lachem, l'chol tzorkeichem? So lachem v'lo lovdei kochav means you can cook for yourself, but not for Gentiles. Lachem v'lo l'klovim, you can cook for yourself, you cannot cook for dogs on Yom Tov. V'idach, and according to Rabbi Yehuda, nam yoksiv, hu, what does he do with hu, which is limiting? So, ksiv hu, uksiv lachem. So Rabbi Yehuda says, well, it says hu, but it also says to you. So it depends. If it's something that you could have, so for example, if you have a knife that got damaged on Yom Tov, so then you couldn't have fixed it before Yom Tov because it only got damaged in the first place on Yom Tov. So it says Rabbi Yehuda, you'll be able to fix that on Yom Tov, right? Even these sort of, right, not the cooking itself, but sort of these Facebook Meta things around them, such as, fixing a knife that broke on Yom Tov. But if the knife had already broken from before Yom Tov, so then comes the word of hu, v'lo machshir, that you can cook, but you can't fix this knife that broke before Yom Tov. Right? If it happened before Yom Tov, then you have to do it before Yom Tov. Ein ben Shabbos liyom HaKippurim, ela shezez dono bidei adam, v'zez dono b'karis. The only difference between Shabbos and Yom Kippur is that on Shabbos the punishment is man, right, by man, right? We stone you, whereas v'zez dono b'karis, whereas Yom Kippur the punishment is karis, is you're going to die and everything like that. So all inyan tashlumin zev is eshavin, but when it comes to payments, they are the same. Meaning, just like on Shabbos, right, there's a concept of komle b'derabamine, that we sort of establish you on the more significant of your punishments. Meaning, if a fellow, stole money and also was like Michal Shabbos, so then he's chayav skila, we have to stone him. So then the damage that he did, the financial damage is kind of waived because we just established the more severe of them. Right? So if you have a fellow who is both chayav financially as well as chayav skila for Shabbos or chayav karis for Yom Kippur, the financial obligation will be waived because there is a more significant punishment at stake, namely karis or misa bidei adam, skila, whatever. So masnisim money. So money masnisim. So who's the author of our Mishnah? Reb Nechunya ben Akana. It's Taka Reb Nechunya ben Akana. The Tanya Reb Nechunya ben Akana. Haya O says Yom Kippurim kishabbos tashumin. That Reb Nechunya ben Akana would make Yom Kippur like Shabbos when it comes to payments. Ma Shabbos mischay benafsho ofatum and tashumin. Just like on Shabbos, if a fellow is going to be chayav misa, so then he's potter for financial payments. So if Yom Kippur is chayav benafsho ofatum and tashumin. So also on Yom Kippur, if a fellow is chayav karis, so he's going to be potter from any financial obligations he may be chayav from on Yom Kippur as well. Interestingly, on the way back from the Har Menuchas today, myself and Shmuley Perkel, of course our friend from Babylon Talmud, and Yosef Niedelman, our friend who we don't necessarily know from Babylon Talmud, but he's nonetheless a chaver, and we were discussing Ibn Nechunya ben Akana as well. So very, very interesting. Tanan Osam, we talk alone over there. That if you have a fellow who's chayiv karis, but he was warned that if you do that thing, you're going to get malchus, and they administer lashes. Well then, niftu midei kreisason. Well then, you're no longer chayiv karis. If you're chayiv karis but you got malchus, so then you're no longer chayiv karis. Shenemar, as the pasuk says, v'nikla achicha leinecha, that you'll get malchus and then he's your brother. So that once already you get the malchus, then you go back to being like a brother, and therefore kilu v'nikla achicha, right? So meaning you have a fellow who's chayiv malchus, who's chayiv karis, but he got malchus, so now he's already like everybody else. Tivra ben Chananya ben Gamliel, that's the opinion of Chananya ben Gamliel. Amr b'Yochanan chalukun olav chaver Chananya ben Gamliel. So it says to Yochanan that actually the rabbis argue on Reb Chananya ben Gamliel. So Reb Chananya ben Gamliel says a fellow was chayiv karis and he gets malchus, so he's no longer chayiv karis. But apparently says Reb Yochanan that Reb Chananya ben Gamliel's the Chacham argue on him. Amar Rava, says Rava, Amri Bei Rab, they say in the Besmedrash of Rab, Tanina, that we taka learn in our Mishnah in Ben Yom Kippurim, the Shabbos, that the only difference between Yom Kippur and Shabbos is that on Shabbos the punishment is human, is by people, that we stone you, whereas on Yom Kippur the punishment is karis. Now Vim Isa, and if it were true that if it were true like what Rabbi Chananya ben Gamliel is saying, that you can just whack the fellow and then he's no longer chayiv karis, well then idi v'idi b'dei adam well then even by Yom Kippur when there's a chayiv karis, you can just whack him, and that's done by people, and therefore that's also man-made and not necessarily karis. So Amar of Nachman Hamani Reb Yitzchak he to Amar Malchus b'chayiv krisis leko. So says Rav Nachman, so I think this is a different case of Rav Nachman by Yitzchak. Okay, so says Rav Nachman by Yitzchak, so our Mishnah that says that Shabbos is taka b'dei adam and Yom Kippur is karis, so that's Rav Yitzchak's opinion. Dama Malchus b'chayiv krisis leka, who says that you're unable to get malchus when it comes to something that you chayiv karis for. You can't get malchus, and therefore the author of our Mishnah is Rabbi Yitzchak, and therefore on Yom Kippur you're only chayiv karis, you can't get malchus. The Tanya is we learn in the Brayso, Rabbi Yitzchak Omer says Rabbi Yitzchak chayive kresos bichlal hayu, that that initially we had taught that you chayiv karis for any of the inappropriate relationships that you're not allowed to have. For lamayotzos karis ba'achoso laduna bikaris v'lav malchus. And how come we then mention that there's kares by your sister. Shouldn't that have just been included by all of the other forbidden relationships? So to say that davka it's kares, not malchus. Okay, so fine. So we see that according to Rabbi Yitzchak, davka, when you chayav kares, you cannot get malchus and get out of it. And therefore, our Mishnah that says that davka on Yom Kippur there's kares, and it's not man-made, man-inflicted. So that's Rabbi Yitzchak's opinion. Rav Ashi Omer says, Rav Ashi, afilu temer rabbanan. You can even say that the author of our Mishnah is the rabbis, i.e., that you can get malchus even for kares, but afilu temer rabbanan zeikers don't be the adam zeikers don't be kares. What the Mishnah is saying is, yes, technically on Yom Kippur, if you chayav kares, if they warned you that you'll get malchus, so you could theoretically get malchus and be pater. But the thing is, the main punishment of Shabbos is man-made. The main punishment of Yom Kippur, the default punishment is kares. Even though technically if they warn you, maybe you can get malchus, but the default really is kares. Friends, that was Daf Zayin of Masechta Megillah. The first part of Daf Zayin discussed sort of the writing down of the Megillah, of how Esther approached the sages and asked for the Megillah to be written down, and also a question if the Megillah is mitame your hands or not. Shmuel says no, because he says, like Rabbi Yeshua, that it is not actually part of the canon, whereas Reb Shimon ben Yochai says that Esther Taka is mitame your yadayim. Friends, we said that Esther was written in Ruach HaKodesh. We gave all sorts of proofs how we know that Esther was written in Ruach HaKodesh. Friends, we talked about Mishloach Manos and Matanos Levyonim. That Mishloach Manos, that you have to send to at least one fellow 2 cooked foods, 2 maidonim, 2 delicacies, and Matanos Levyonim, that you have to give some money to 2 poor people. We had the world famous line by Rava that Chayav inish l'vsume b'puraya ad lo yoda bin ar haman l'baruch matre, that a fellow needs to get so intoxicated, so fashniket on Purim, that he doesn't know the difference between cursed is Haman and blessed is Mordechai. With the story of Rabba and Reb Zera with their Sudas Purim that they had together. And then we got to 2 Mishnayos at the end. Well, also there was halacha that you can't read Megillah at night. Then we said that the only difference between Shabbos and Yom Tov is ochel nefesh, is that on Yom Tov you're allowed to cook. We then saw the machlokas between the Chacham and Reb Yehuda about what about these sort of Facebook meta things regarding cooking, such as can you fix a knife that broke? So Reb Yehuda says yes, the Chachamim say no. And then we said at the end that the only difference between Yom Kippur and Kares is that Yom Kippur and Shabbos is that on Shabbos the punishment is man-made, it's like stoning, whereas on Yom Kippur it is Kares. And we saw machlokus between the Chacham and Rabbi Yitzchak about if they warned you that you'll get lashes, can you actually administer lashes? Rabbi Yitzchak says no, the Chacham say yes. Friends, that was Daf Zayin of Masechta Megillah. I hope you enjoyed it very much. Peace out.